Hello and welcome to a special edition of Talking Scheidt this afternoon. Thanks for tuning in wherever you are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a kind of special edition today. Of course, the Player of the Year nominations will be announced very soon, of course, for this season, 2023. So what we're going to do is today on the live, we're going to do a sort of round robin sort of tournament. We've got a 12-man shortlist made up just now. We'll whittle those down to 6 through little matchups, and then the guys will pick their top 3 at the end. Obviously, the 6 will then go to 3 after those matchups, and then we'll sort of decide on our top 3 players of the season in the Scottish Premiership. So yeah, to do that with me today is, of course, Mark Hendry and Mark McDougall. Chaps, doing all right?
All good, yourself?
Not bad.
Not bad, Gary.
Okay, so I've got a wee teaser first as well, so we'll come back to it at the end, but I'll list it just now. So the teaser before we start is obviously Player of the Year themed. So here it is. Name the previous 5 non-Scottish winners of the PFA Player of the Year award. So the previous 5 non-Scottish winners. So that's a teaser. We can obviously think about that in the background, and we'll come back to the answer at the end of the live as a wee clue as well. But we'll get back to that. We'll crack on with the little tournament we've got in mind for this live. In fact, before we do that, we're just going to pour over the predictions that we all made last year. We always do this at the start of season in an article. We obviously predict the title winners and the winners of all the lower leagues as well. Player of the Year, of course, and Young Player of the Year. But we'll just focus on what the guys have said. It was obviously in July last year. So Hendo, of course, you went with Ryan Kent for Player of the Year. What's your thoughts on that decision now?
Well, needless to say, I don't put money on in the bookies anymore because my predictions are terrible. My betting's obviously poor. No, he's definitely not in the conversation for Player of the Year. Not even close. To be honest, the mindset that I had was obviously last season, just off the back of a Europa League final run. All this talk for how long, ages and ages, about improving your numbers. Improving your numbers, getting your stats up. He needs to do this or he needs to do that. And I just thought this will be the season that he does it.
Right.
And if anything, it's been one of his quietest seasons, if I'm correct in saying that. So it's not looking great for Hendo, I'll tell you that much.
I was going to say, I hate digging these out, but I really don't.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
It's quite good. I think when we actually done these, I was on holiday at the time, so I've not got anything written down on paper at all, which is really good. It's sort of saving me. And Doug's, obviously, you went with James Tavernier, who, of course, has had a brilliant season, to be fair, for Rangers this season, hasn't he?
Well, he's had an alright season. I think up till Christmas he wasn't great. But since the winter break, I think he's been really good. Probably one of the best in the league since then, but not over the course of the season.
His numbers have been good. I think that's what I sort of mean. That his numbers have been obviously hit 100 goals for Rangers as well this season, which is just remarkable. For a right back.
Yeah. I think he's always consistent and he's always pretty good, but he's not quite Player of the Year this year. He's probably just outside that list. But he's been pretty good. It's not been his worst season and it's not been his best season.
He's had a better season than Ryan Kent, anyway.
No, it's not as bad as the prediction as yours, Hendo. Right, okay, we'll just get cracking then. So obviously I think 4 nominees get announced in real life, but we'll, for the purpose of making this work, it'll end up being 3 for us. So as I said, we'll start with that 12-man shortlist, whittle it down to 6, whittle it down to 3, and then we'll pick our top 3. And obviously if there's, between the matchups, if there's any sort of disagreements between the two, then I'll have the sort of cast and vote, if you like, in terms of who we pick and who progresses to the next phase.
I think there was a specific reason why it was myself and Diggs that were scheduled to be on this one today.
That's Okay. Right. So here's the short list. So we've got Callum McGregor, of course, last year's winner. He's had another excellent season. Kyogo Furuhashi, of course, leading the scoring charts. We've got Rio Hatate, Greg Taylor, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Malik Tillman, James Tavernier. We've got Duke, Kevin Van Veen, Mark O'Hara, Lawrence Shankland, and we've got LU in there as well. So that's a 12-man shortlist. So the first matchup we've got was obviously just I put them into a sort of random generator, so they're all random matchups. The first one is Callum McGregor against Kevin Van Veen. So, what do you think?
I think
it's actually one of a tougher one than I was expecting.
Yeah, Van Veen's been brilliant, hasn't he, this season?
when you look at Cam McGregor as a player, he's been absolutely brilliant. But
yeah,
what Kevin Van Veen's done for Motherwell this season has been ridiculous.
Right.
The amount of goals he scored for a team that hasn't been great for most of the season. They've also been pretty good since Kettlewell went in, but apart from that, been pretty poor.
You could probably say he's almost carried them in terms of a sort of forward sense. I mean, if it went for his goals, then geez, God knows where they would be.
You've also got that spell as well. Was it like 2 months that Cam McGregor was out injured for?
Right. Okay. Right.
That injury, so I think you've got to look at that as well. And I think if you're looking at over the course of the season, I'd probably just lean towards Kevin Van Veen because of what he's done for Motherwell. But Cam McGregor's been outstanding.
It's a difficult matchup.
I think McGregor's been brilliant as well whenever he's played. But I think that couple of months out probably edges it towards Van Veen for me.
Right. Okay. Hendo, what do you think?
I don't know how we can not say the captain of the best club in the country right now. It's hard because obviously he does a job that is very kind of not underrated. He's definitely not underrated or underappreciated, but he does a job that maybe isn't as flashy as the players around him, and that's kind of the whole point of Callum McGregor, isn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, Kevin Van Veen has been outstanding for Motherwell in a poor Motherwell team. It's a hard one, isn't it? But for the basis of the game, for the basis of the show, I'll side with Diggs because we could be here all day. Kevin Van Veen.
I don't want to cast and vote really.
No,
so help me out here.
Kevin Van Veen has single-handedly kept Motherwell up. To be at the core of it, he has. Without his 20+, they would be relegation fodder without a shadow of a doubt. Okay. So yeah, let's go Kevin Van Veen with a side note of with an asterisk beside it because I am a fence sitter. And
I think the thing for me is here. Just the last point I'll make is if Kevin Van Veen's not in the Motherwell team, there's a good chance to get relegated. If Cam McGregor's not in the Celtic team, they still win the league.
Celtic still unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get that point. It all makes sense. Right. Okay. So we'll fire Kevin Van Veen through to the next phase. He wins that one. All right. The next matchup on the list here, of course, again, it's just randomly generated. So we've got Duke against Ellie Yuan, which is potentially maybe one of the more easier ones, if I say it. Dare I say it?
It's Ellie Yuan all day, isn't it?
Disappoint all of his fans here, but I mean, Duke has been ridiculous this season, hasn't he? He's really lit up the Premiership, hasn't he?
Yeah, for me, it's Duke all day long. I don't really think it really needs discussed that much. I think I like Eli Yuan as a player, but he's not on the same level as Duke yet.
No,
yeah, it's Duke all day.
Yuan has contributed, quite well to Hibs this season. Hendo, it hasn't been good, but Duke's been on a level.
Sorry, he started to score a few goals, didn't he? Which obviously was helpful because it took him a wee while to get going. I watched him against Hearts on the derby, and his final decision and his final ball was quite poor. I was quite disappointed with that because I do think he's a good player. But Duke he's just head and shoulders above. There's a reason. There's all this talk about transfer interest and Duke from down south, from abroad, and you're not really hearing anything about Ellie Yuan. Again, I'm not trying to shame the guy because he is a good player. He's done well for Hibs, but Duke's just kind of head and shoulders above him for me right now.
I think you've made that point pretty well, because I think the difference between them is that, Yuan, he is pretty good in getting into, positions where he would score, but he maybe just doesn't do that enough, whereas Duke has been more clinical this season, and he's racked up a few assists as well. So you've got to say that Duke's going to win that battle. So we'll fire Duke through to the next phase. Let's go to the next matchup then. We'll go to, interesting one here. We've got Cameron Carter-Vickers, of course, Celtic centre-back, and he's up against Malik Tillman of Rangers. What are we thinking here?
Duke, do you want to start, mate?
On this one, I'd go towards Cameron Carter-Vickers, because I think he's been outstanding. I think he's probably the best defender in the league by a good distance.
Right.
I think Malik Tillman is probably the young player of the year in Scotland. I don't think there's anybody else close to him at that level, and I think this is what our debate was about yesterday. I think if I was picking the 4 players that I would pick for the award, I would have Tillman in it.
Right.
I would also have Cameron Carter-Vickers there, and I think Carter-Vickers has been excellent for Celtic all season. I think he's an absolute rock at the back. I think there's times where Carl Starfelt doesn't always look great. I think there's times when even Joe Hart doesn't always look great. He can look a bit sloppy at times. He's a good keeper, but I think he's got a mistake in him. Whereas I think the reason Celtic are so good defensively is because of Carter-Vickers. So I would go for him on this one. Like I say, I think Malik Tillman's been excellent for Rangers, and he would be my young player of the year if I was picking one. But he scored 10 goals in the league. I think he's carried Rangers all the time. But Carter-Vickers for me.
Yeah, and I think the stat is as well, Hendo, that Carter-Vickers hasn't lost a league game with Celtic. Whenever he sort of features, which is quite ridiculous, to be fair. I know obviously Celtic have only lost once this season in the league, but Carter-Vickers was missing for that game against St Mirren, but it's just an incredible record, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's shown how top draw he is. Pretty much every time he's been called into action. But I can't think of many strikers who have given him that tough a game.
Right.
He was maybe against Rangers when Celtic won 3-2. Just there, he was a wee bit shaky at times. But even on his, one of his worst days, he was still, solid as a rock.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think he's top notch. But to Duggs' point, I also think Malik Tillman is a really, really promising young guy. He's shown that he can score goals, he can create, he can link up, he can do it all in the kind of forward line. I just in the overall player of the year kind of stakes, if you want to call it that, the discussion that we had yesterday, Duggs, was would or should Malik Tillman be in there? I didn't think he should. I know you thought sort of possibly, or yes, he should, but I just don't think he's been quite as influential or quite as good as players who will make the eventual shortlist. But again, young player of the year, if that was one that we could vote on and put him in there, then he would definitely be up there.
Yeah, without a doubt, I would agree with that as well. Right, okay, so Cameron Carter-Vickers wins that wee matchup. The next matchup here we've got on the list, we've got Lauren Shankland, of course, firing in the goals for Hearts this season, and he's up against another Celtic player here. It's Greg Taylor. So maybe a sort of unfair sort of matchup, but that's what generators gave us.
For me, Greg Taylor is my vote for player of the year.
Is he right? Okay.
I mean, the football writers will vote for player of the year, and he's the name that I'll write down. I think he's been unbelievable this season.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's players that I'm sure we'll come to in the next rounds that could arguably have had better seasons statistically than Greg Taylor, and that's fine. I think he's shown how adaptable he is this season.
Yeah. By
playing as an inverted fullback and basically taking another position in the midfield whenever asked. Mm-hmm. He's upped his game going forward. I think he's stronger defensively. When he sits in the midfield, he somehow he's now been able to start playing eye the needle passes.
Aye.
I can remember one in particular. I think it was at Kilmarnock where he put in Dyson Maida. Sorry, Gary, but that's just the one that springs to mind.
I remember it as well. It was good.
he's been unbelievable. As I say, he's adapted so well.
Yeah.
There's other players who have been playing their position and playing their position really, really well. But for Taylor, he's had to tweak it and change it. And just what we were saying earlier on, Diggs, about if Callum McGregor's not in the team, Celtic still win. Whereas it's not the case with Motherwell. With Celtic, when Greg Taylor's not in the team, they're not the same. They're not the same team.
Right.
And I know it's a fullback position, and it's obviously not the most important position for Celtic on a football pitch. But when it's not him, and when it's Bernabei or it's whoever else, I know it was Juranovic who played left back a wee bit, and whoever. But when he's not there, it's just not the same. You don't get the same Celtic team.
Right.
Shankland has been brilliant. He's first Hearts player since John Robertson, I think it was, to score 20 league goals, which is incredible.
Yep.
But again, Hearts they're fourth now. They're in a bit of a free fall. He's had a good season, but he's not on Greg. He's not had the season for me anyway that Greg.
Maybe not as consistent as Taylor throughout the whole season. Potentially, he has maybe even off the well a wee bit. Obviously, Hearts have overall. So yeah, see that point. Yeah,
I'd say that. I think if you're looking at the first half of the season, Shankland's probably up there to contention. But since the World Cup, he's not really been great. He's not scored as many goals. I know he's playing a slightly different role to what he did at the start of the year when he sort of dropped back a wee bit more into like a number 10.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's Greg Taylor for this one. He's been brilliant. He's really improved over the last couple of years. I think most Celtic fans would have been happy to see him go 18 months ago even.
I was going to say that because I think when he signed, there was doubts about him, wasn't he?
I think he was a bit unfairly compared to Kieran Tierney as well after
that's right. Yeah,
doesn't really help. But he's been brilliant this season, especially. I think he's really grown into playing how Postecoglou wants him to play at Celtic, and he does it really well. I personally wouldn't have him as my player of the year. I think he's in contention for it, but I wouldn't have him right up there. Right. He's been brilliant, and he's definitely been better than Lord Shankland for me.
I also think if you've got a Greg Taylor as a left back in a team that is not managed by Ange Postecoglou, I don't think you have the same Greg Taylor. I don't think you have the same upwards trajectory, if you want to call it that. Under Steve Clarke, obviously he was good. He won him the move to Celtic, but I just think under Ange and the position change that he's been not forced into, but that he's adapted to, and he's become such a better player for it. Whereas if Celtic had hired, Eddie Howe or whoever it might have been at the time when they were looking for somebody to replace Neil Lennon, if it wasn't Ange, then I don't know if Greg Taylor would have been given the shot. I don't know if Greg Taylor would have been the same player that he is now because, as you say, there was doubts about him at the start and just put a bit of faith in him. He's become this, brilliant player for Celtic at fullback, but under another manager, it might not have happened. So he's definitely benefited from having Postecoglou in the dugout.
Yeah, and as you sort of allude to, and I think Diggs as well, I mean, it's all fine and well, Ange Postecoglou, coaching, that into him, that sort of role, the inverted fullback role into Taylor, but he's got to take on that, information and use it in his game or on the field, during high pressure moments, and I've got to say that he's absolutely done that, and he's embracing that role. So yeah, he's been outstanding this year. So we'll put Taylor through into the next round in terms of that matchup. Okay, the fifth one, we've actually got an all Celtic battle here. We've got Kyogo against his countryman Rio Hatate. That's a cracker, that one, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a tough one to pick. I think I say it's a tough one to pick, but for me, the player of the year this year has been Kyogo, so it's not really a tough one to pick after I said that. But I understand why it would be, because Hatate's been outstanding as well. Yeah. Again, especially the first half of the season, I thought he was excellent. Second half of the season, he's not been at the same level as he was before Christmas, I don't think. But he's still been absolutely brilliant. That's not to say that he's not been great. He's still been 8 out of 10 most weeks. But I just think Kyogo's goals are so important to Celtic and how he plays. He's impossible to defend against the way he plays. It still baffles me that he wasn't in the World Cup squad for Japan.
I know.
Same with Hatate, really, but I just think Kyogo was just a different level to anything in Scotland. I think he's absolutely outstanding, and yeah, he was really unlucky not to go to Qatar. And I just think that his goals, I think, what's he on, 26, 27, something like that.
Yeah, all competitions. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I just don't think you can argue with that. I just think he's been absolutely brilliant all season, and as good as Hatate has been, he's just not been at the same level as Kyogo for me.
Yeah, I think Dukes has pretty much summed it all up there, Hendo, Jink.
No.
Oh, okay.
This is the one I was actually dreading coming up between each other, because I knew that eventually if they weren't against each other right away, they would narrow in.
Against each other eventually, yeah.
I think Rio Hatate's been I know I've just right. Okay, let me clarify here. I know I've just told you that Greg Taylor is my player of the year, but if Greg Taylor's form somehow falls off a cliff between now and the end of the season, and Rio Hatate comes back and plays 6s out of 10s, then he'll be player of the year. You know what I mean? He's been outstanding. He's been something that Celtic really desperately have missed over the years. They came when they played Rangers again quite recently. You could tell that how much they missed him, how badly they missed him. I just think his movements, I know Kyogo's movement's great. Hatate, the way he takes the ball and the passes that he can make he's just on another level. I don't think he'll be at Celtic for long, if I'm being completely honest, because he's Kyogo's 28, but Hatate's 25 maybe.
Yeah.
He's got a massive career ahead of him if it's not at Celtic Park, and I think Celtic will make a huge profit off him whenever he does leave. I just think he's been one of their best, if not their best players this season for me, behind Greg Taylor obviously. He's shown that he's versatile as well, because when Juranovic was out earlier this season, he filled in at right back, and I think he scored 2 goals in his first game at right back.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
I mean, he's different class. So this is where we disagree, Diggs. I think Hatate has been sensational. It's not to say that Kyogo hasn't. Obviously, everything you outlined is spot on. Apart from your decision to pick Kyogo over Rio.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of those ones that it could go either way. And
it's a coin flip, isn't it? Really,
whatever way. But I just think personally, I would choose Kyogo, but I can see why Hatate would be picked as well.
Yeah, I think I'll have the deciding vote here. It's the first time we've disagreed in terms of the matchups, but I do think that Kyogo, the goals that he's got, and that just separates me him from Hatate. He's just obviously I was there last week at Rugby Park, and it was just magnificent. It's just the movement. I think it's that stands out above his goals and his assists, whatever his output. Statistical output. It's when you watch him for 90 minutes, it's the runs that he makes. He's so clever up here, and I don't think anyone in Scotland can really handle him. As a defender, I just think he's a step above every sort of defender in terms of their thinking. I think Hatate's brilliant as well, and I think both. I was just thinking that in my head there, I think both would flourish if they were to maybe move down south in the Premier League. I think both would flourish and do really well. I was trying to sort of have a reason to sort of separate them a wee bit, but I think they both do really well. But I just think the goals that Kyogo scores is just going to edge it for me. So I think we'll put Kyogo through for this one.
I'm not offended by that at all, because he has been great. It's just personal preference, really, depending on what you prefer to see, or what what you classify as the winning point. Because Celtic score, I don't know how many goals they've scored this season. And the goals come from anywhere on the pitch with Celtic. So
I think if you put either of them up against any of the other 10 players in this list, they probably come out on top.
Probably going to win, aye.
Yeah.
I think your point, though, Diggs, is that I think your point about the fact that Kyogo's probably been more consistent throughout the season in terms of performance. I mean, Hatate, you can't say that, as Hendo says, that maybe the 6 out of 10s, 7 out of 10s he hasn't been good in. But, Yeah, has been injured as well. Hatate. But you probably say that Kyogo over the course of the season consistently maybe just edges it and that sort of front. So, all right, we'll go with Kyogo for this matchup, and we'll move to the last one for this round. So it's
Can't remember who's left.
Mark O'Hara against James Tavernier. Yep, that's the last one. Mark O'Hara against James Tavernier. Of course, they were facing each other last weekend on the pitch, of course, at Ibrox. O'Hara probably coming up trumps in that battle in terms of on the pitch. Of course, his 2 goals were ridiculously good, and over the course of the season, he's been brilliant as well. He's really charged St Mirren up that table. That obviously in for a shout of top 6 and of course Europe as well. But yeah, Diggs, what do you think? Tough one.
Yeah, it's a hard one to pick, but I think both of them have been really good all season. Well, not all season, but they've been really good.
Yeah,
over the course of the season. O'Hara's been a brilliant signing for St Mirren. His goals have been excellent. The 2 he scored at Ibrox last weekend were outstanding. The first one especially.
right.
I think he's got something like 12 goals this season as well. So he's done well, and I know some of them are from penalties, but then you could say the same about James Tavernier. A lot of his goals came from penalties. You can't really use that. You've still got to score them. It's a difficult one. I think O'Hara's been excellent for St Mirren. I think I would just edge towards Tavernier. Just like his output for Rangers, just ridiculous.
Right.
Really noticeable when he's either off form or he's out of the team. Because they just don't have that same attacking threat. Like if you look at that Rangers team, I mean, it's a bit ridiculous that the most attacking player and most creative player is the right back. And it's the case again this season. Some of his goals have been brilliant that he scored. Just look at the one. In fact, both goals against Celtic, a couple of his goals were really good goals. Kick especially, and then I mean, what's he even doing at the back post to score a header at that point? But this is one that's really difficult for me. I don't know for certain which way I would go. I think I would just lean towards Tavernier, but Mark O'Hara's been brilliant as well. I think he's if he wasn't just signed for St Mirren, you could see Hibs or Hearts coming in from him, and he could make that step up. But yeah, I would have edged towards Tavernier, I think. But it's another one that's a toss of the coin. It's could go either way.
That's and what are you thinking? Obviously, I mean, he's a midfielder. He scored a lot of goals, but Duke says, Tavernier's he's not a striker, he's not a midfielder, he's a right back, he's a defender, and he's getting all those goals as well. I mean, maybe that just edge it for him.
I would have to go for Mark O'Hara personally. Right. Tavernier's done this season, probably what he's done almost every season for Rangers. Right. He's had a very similar, samey type season for me personally. Mark O'Hara and a St Mirren team that genuinely could get third place this season. That's not out of the realm of possibility. That is a genuine possibility with Hearts tumbling. Who knows where Aberdeen, they've got Rangers this weekend. If they lose and St Mirren win, you never know. Mark O'Hara has been their player of the year. Without a doubt, I don't think there's anybody that would argue that.
Yeah.
So if you're player of the year for a team who is punching well above their weight, with all due respect to St Mirren, you wouldn't expect them to be finishing third or fourth. I remember Tony Fitzpatrick was laughed out of the building when he suggested that they were going to go for top 6 at one point, and then they were going to go try and get Europe and blah blah blah. Yeah. Who's laughing now? But if he's been their player of the year, and let's say they do go on to finish third, even fourth, I mean, player of the year for the team in third when Rangers are so far behind Celtic, which is where they obviously want to be and where they think they should be, winning the title, then I've got to go for O'Hara. Tavernier, as I said, he's been good, especially since Christmas, as Doug mentioned earlier on. But I think it would, for me, I will say O'Hara. That's my right. Kind of full stop on it. But at the same, it's hard to a point because you're thinking, well, it's the caveat is you would vote for him if they finish third or fourth.
Right, okay.
He would certainly be ahead of Tavernier for me if that's the case. If he finished sixth, they finished fifth, he still had a very, very good season, and you could argue that St Mirren are still punching above their weight, finishing fifth. So yeah, I'll go O'Hara, and I'll leave it to you, Gary, to decide.
Yeah, I was going to say just about Tavernier. I mean, I know what you're trying to say, Hendo. I mean, it's almost expected, maybe, that Tavernier's putting these numbers, in terms of goals and assists on the score sheet. I mean, it's almost just expected. It's not really a big surprise, where I think maybe with O'Hara, it maybe is more of a didn't really see this coming. I mean, obviously he's got more than, what I think he said, 12 goals maybe in all competitions this season for St Mirren, which is from midfield is incredible. And I think maybe that just edges it for me, the kind of more wow factor, I suppose, maybe between the two players. So yeah, I think I'm going to edge towards Mark O'Hara with this matchup as well. Again, it's a very tight matchup, just like the last one. I mean, it was almost impossible to pick between Kyogo and Hatate, but this is very similar. I mean, you can't discount Tavernier's quality and what he brings to that Rangers team consistently on a yearly basis. But I'm just going to go with a sort of more just kind of wow factor, more kind of surprise in terms of this season alone, isolated. So yeah, we'll go with Hara as a deciding vote on that one. So that's the first phase done. We'll try and rattle through the next phase now. So they've just been kind of automatically put into their places. They were also already sort of predetermined in terms of who would go through. So we've got the first matchup. It's Van Veen, who came out on top against McGregor, and he's up against Duke for Aberdeen. So there you go. That's another toughie. What do you think?
Duke.
You got to spring for Duke, don't you? Again, Van Veen, everything we've already said, he's kept Motherwell up single-handedly, basically. Yeah. He's been fantastic. Had he scored more goals earlier in the season, they might not be where they are. Right. So, whereas Duke, they're Aberdeen are third, and he's been consistently excellent. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe have a higher array of talent, probably more than Van Veen is, Duke.
Yeah, I think the fact is he's 22 or something like that. This is his first season in senior football. Some of the goals he scored have been well. Two off the top of my head I can think of was the overhead kick at Ross County earlier in the season. The back heel against Dundee United that he scored a few weeks ago in Justin's first Dundee United game. It was just a ridiculous bit of skill. So yeah, for me it's Duke.
I credit Jim Goodwin and Aberdeen for getting him.
Yeah, true.
For nothing. I mean, 50% of their sale, their next sale. That's unbelievable. If he maintains the form for the end of the season and then he starts next season just as well, then he's a couple of £1 million player for sure.
Yeah. I think as well, just when you're talking about Van Veen, I think he did go off the boil a wee bit. I think we said it in a previous podcast actually that when Stevie Hamill was having a bit of trouble at the end of his sort of tenure at Motherwell, I think Van Veen was sort of well off the pace at that point. And I think actually a lot of Motherwell fans were quite angry at him in terms of his output. He did score a barrel of goals at the start of the season and then just kind of totally tailed off. And obviously has been rejuvenated under Stuart Kettlewell, as a lot of the Motherwell players have. But I think that maybe, as a factor in Van Veen coming second in this sort of battle as well. Duke's probably been, more consistent across the season for Aberdeen. So yeah, okay, Duke wins that battle.
Would Duke have beat Cal McGregor, do you think?
What's that?
Would Duke have beat Cal McGregor the way Van Veen did?
For me, yeah.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. Sorry, I know that was the
it's a good one.
Point, just putting them into the category.
I think when you're weighing up these ones, when you're thinking about the season in isolation, it's maybe a bit more of the impact the player has over the other one.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, maybe Duke's, if McGregor was up against Duke in this matchup, then if you take McGregor out of the Celtic team, they're still going to be an unbelievable team. Whereas if you take Duke out of the Aberdeen team, completely different team up front, sort of thing.
I think McGregor kind of falls into the same category that Tavernier did as well when we're talking about it, is that what he does every week, we just expect it. And I think that probably counts against.
Okay, right. So goes into the sort of final three then. The next matchup before we announce the final three, we've got another Celtic matchup, and this is another tough one. We've got Cameron Carter-Vickers against Greg Taylor.
Oh.
Or is it? I'm saying it's difficult. Is it difficult? Pendo's not a great.
See, I do disagree with that. Like, I think Taylor, I just don't think he's at the same level. I think if you take Carter Vickers out as centre back, I know they were fine against Kilmarnock last week, but that was Kilmarnock. I think I saw, especially again, I keep going back to that St. Mirren game for Carter Vickers when he was missing in that game. Celtic's defence was just a nightmare.
Yeah.
I just think he's so important to what Celtic do. So for me, it's Carter Vickers, but I can see why it would be Greg Taylor. But I think Greg Taylor is again more one that, because of his improvement, he almost looks better.
Right.
So,
but for me, it's Carter Vickers.
I take your point, but with Celtic as centre half, so let's say Carter Vickers is out, they now have Yuki Kobayashi, who can just drop right in there as he has done, and he's looked really competent. To say that he has looked good.
No, he was good against Kilmarnock,
Alistair Johnson's played at centre half before. He could just slide right in, get Tony Ralston or whoever out at right back. Greg Taylor goes off or goes out. Can you trust Alexander Bernabei? I don't know.
Does that say more about Bernabei than it says about?
Well, to a point, but at the same time, Greg Taylor's starting spot is he's made it his own, and he's done so well that everybody else underneath him, or when he's not playing, looks mediocre. You know what I mean? And I think Celtic have better options as a deputy centre half than they do a deputy left back, and it shows because Greg Taylor wasn't a world beater. You know, he's not a Champions League winner now, but he wasn't, the best left back in the country. You could argue that maybe now he is.
Okay.
So it's Greg Taylor for me still.
Okay, I'm going to quickly bring in my sort of Premier League theory again into this one. Do you think Carter Vickers would excel more in the English Premier League than a Greg Taylor?
Good question.
I'm not.
I know. Obviously, we're looking at a season of isolation, and it really is. Just
if you've got to pick one, there's got to be some sort of judges card. They both be tested a lot more. Anyway,
right. I'm just thinking about my question. Maybe it doesn't have to be Premier League. It just maybe has to be a higher level. Who do you think is going to shoot up higher? Who's has a sort of higher trajectory in terms of the sort of potential?
Potential, I'd say Cameron Carter-Vickers.
Right. Okay.
I say Celtic will make more money off him than they will off Greg Taylor.
Right.
But
this season, at the highest level, he'll play. I don't think Greg Taylor goes to England.
Okay. Yeah, I probably agree with you. But then in saying that, Celtic have been really brave in Europe, and he's been a big part of that. In Champions League, they were brave. They played their way. They played with Greg Taylor as an inverted fullback. Right. And he was doing the same. He was playing in midfield. He was trying to play those passes, and right. It was okay. Real Madrid away aside, I don't remember them being absolutely battered or hammered by anything.
They were good in all the games that they played.
They were, and Greg Taylor was a big part of that. Cameron Carter-Vickers obviously was a big part of that too. But I do think Greg Taylor has just come on leaps and bounds for me. Cameron Carter-Vickers had a great season last season as well. When he was on loan, Greg Taylor was fine. Now, Greg Taylor has really upped his game. And I guess that's the difference between how, a better player in general compared to a better season.
Right. Okay.
Because Cameron Carter-Vickers was brilliant last season, and he's been consistently good this season as well. Greg Taylor was fine last season, but he's elevated himself to a whole nother level. And for me, that's player of the year level. But definitely.
You're both bringing on really good arguments for both players, and I'm really, really torn here. I've got the deciding vote again. This one's really, really tough, isn't it? Both players have, huge impacts for Celtic.
I'm going to take over you doing your rota, Gary.
I know it's tough, this one. I was gonna actually say Carter Vickers, but I'm actually gonna edge towards Taylor. You've maybe just convinced me.
Commanding bias.
Commanding bias, aye.
a tinge of that, Dougs. But I'm just gonna have it Taylor, just edging it. Again, it's really tough. But I think, as we were sort of alluding to as well, that he's probably had the biggest improvement over maybe anyone in the Scottish Premiership, arguably, in terms of last season. Yeah, so I've got to say he stepped up to the plate this season. And just going back to when he signed for Celtic, obviously I was sort of gutted as a Kelly fan when he left, but I really did not expect him to excel as much as he has. I really didn't. And obviously, as you alluded to as well, Hendo, it was just about the time when Tierney left as well, and he was getting compared to that sort of level. And I think that almost everyone wrote him off at that point as that sort of Tierney replacement, and I think he's just really excelled.
Right.
It's a testament to his mentality as well, isn't it?
I agree. And again, it's season versus it's not. We're not looking at the best player here in general. We're looking at who's had the best season.
Yeah,
I just think Greg Taylor has had the best season.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We'll go with Taylor then. A really tough one again, but Taylor wins on that front. So the final battle of this second phase is Kyogo against Mark O'Hara. Actually, okay. So what we're thinking here?
Yes, it's Kyogo.
All day.
As much else needs said to that one. It's Kyogo.
As maybe more of an easier one, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're not rubbishing Mark O'Hara at all. Obviously, We've just sat for 10 minutes talking about how great he is. He's just been knocked out of this round by the better talent, better player in the season.
Yeah, tough to agree with that one. So Kyogo goes through in terms of that round. Okay, so I think we've got the final three then. We've got Duke, we've got Greg Taylor, and we have Kyogo. Those are the final three. So essentially at this point now, I was just going to ask you guys individually, and I'd like you to order them from third to second to winner. Out of those three that have obviously won this wee tournament that we've done. So if you can do that just now, that would be great.
Diggs, if you want to take a minute to think, you look as if you're battling.
I know who my number one is. It's just which way I put the other two.
Right, I'll go first then.
Right, go
number 3 is Duke.
Okay.
Number two is Kyogo, and number 1 is Greg Taylor.
Right. Okay.
Just based on everything I've already said.
I was going to say, you don't need to explain yourself any further with Greg Taylor.
But Duke's been brilliant, but in a winning Celtic team that are top of the league by a mile, Kyogo's just better than him. And obviously Aberdeen as well. They started off not so good, and they've recently kind of exploded. And Duke's been a big part of that. But Kyogo's been right throughout the season excellent. And we won't talk about Greg Taylor.
I suppose the debate here, Duke, I think that's what you're going to allude to, that you probably have Duke third. It's just who you put above each other in terms of Kyogo and Greg Taylor.
That's not what I was going to say at all.
No, I think Duke is going the other one. I think he's debating.
I think for me, if I was picking the 4 players that I would have on the shortlist, I would have Duke on it, and I wouldn't have Greg Taylor. So for me, it's going to be
on the final 4.
Yeah, so for me, it'd be Greg Taylor third, Duke second, and Kyogo first.
Okay, and can you give a reason for that?
Yeah, like you just said, I think if I was picking a final 4, I would have Duke on it. I wouldn't have Greg Taylor.
Just more of an impact, really,
it's not saying Greg Taylor's not had a great season. He has. I just don't have him as a player of the year candidate.
Duke's has been day drinking.
I just don't think he's at the same level as the other Celtic players, and I don't think he's had the same impact as.
I can see that point. I think the argument we've made maybe in this live is that Greg Taylor's the most improved player maybe of the season, whereas when you're matching up against pure talent, you'd maybe say that Duke and Kyogo beat him in that front. I think that's.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's not nothing against Greg Taylor. It's just my personal view that I wouldn't have him in that list. So
yeah. No, I see both arguments. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
All
Kyogo
right.
was top.
Good Guruk boy as well. Maybe I'm just a bit biased.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So the final three obviously was Duke, Taylor, and Kyogo. Obviously, Hendo, you've put Taylor as your number one, and Duke's with Kyogo. But yeah, really difficult. But we've came to something, and that's the top three. So you know, you'd probably say that one of those would probably are going to go on to win it. Would you maybe say that in real life? Would you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Him
Yeah, probably.
or Hatate for me.
Right. Who do you think will win it then, Dukes, overall?
I think Kyogo. Or
You think
Hatate.
Kyogo will
I
win
think
it?
Kyogo.
Right, between those two, right? Okay.
If I've told you a million times who I want to win it, but I think Real Hatate will win it. I think he will.
Okay. Right.
I think more
Brilliant.
players who have played against Kyogo and Hatate will remember how good they've been up against them.
I suppose there's a couple of different votes, isn't there? You've got the PFA, you've got the players player, you've got the SFW.
Yeah.
So
All right.
maybe we're all right.
Yeah, exactly. Good chance we could be.
Yeah. There's, as you say, there's a couple of awards up for grabs, so maybe we'll see different winners across the board. All righty, that was pretty good. That's the tournament done and dusted. We've got our top three, our Football Scotland top three. We'll go back to the teaser then very quickly.
I forgot that.
We've probably not even thought about it, given the thought we put into the Player of the Year tournament. But I'll just read it out again, just for the viewers watching. The teaser was: name the previous 5 non-Scottish winners of the PFA Player of the Year award. So that's not the writers one; it's the PFA.
Van Dijk's got to be on there.
Van Dijk, he's not on. He's not on it.
Oh, right. Okay.
James Tavernier won it when Rangers won the league a couple of years ago, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right, Dukes.
Yeah. So him.
Yeah. Can we think of any more? The clue that I had down was that it stretches back to the 2009-2010 season. So that's when it kind of stretches back. Five players.
Was Michael Higdon after that?
Michael Higdon's on the list, yeah.
I was going to say him.
I remember him winning it, but I couldn't remember.
Another legend.
He won it in, it was 2012-13. I've got the list up now. Yeah, so we've got 2. So Tavernier was obviously 2020-21 when obviously Rangers won the title. There's 2 in between Higdon and Tavernier.
Did Jelic win it?
Jelic did not win it.
I'm having a shock.
Did not win it. Yeah. So there's 2 in between Higdon and Tavernier. I'll give you 2 the years. There was
Scott Sinclair. Must have won it.
Yeah, that's one of them. Doug's well done. 2016-17, and 2 years previously to that, there was another Celtic player. 2014-15.
Gary
No, it's maybe one that will slip the mind of a lot of people.
Is this the last one we're waiting on?
We've got one more actually. So we've got 3. We've got Tavernier, we've got Scott Sinclair, and we've got Higdon, all Englishmen, of course. And we've got 2 others that are not English either, or Scottish, of course.
It's not hard. It's not an easy question for me anyway. Doug just rattled off 3 in the last 10 seconds.
Well, the 2 as I say, it stretches back to the 2009-10 season, and it was a Rangers player who won it that year.
I was going to say Rangers won the league that year, so I think
Carlos Cuellar.
He was gone by then.
Not Cuellar.
Gone by then.
Yeah.
Of course. To the eye.
I'll give you another clue, then it'll narrow it down a wee bit more. He is British, so that narrows it down.
The Rangers player
must be Stephen Davis.
Davis.
Stephen Davis. He was the winner in 2009-10. Yeah. So we've got Davis, we've got Higdon, and there's one more in between Higdon and Sinclair. As I say, it was a 2014-15 season, and it's a Celtic player. And he's, I'll put it out there, he's not British at all. He's out of Europe.
He's from Europe?
Yeah. European player.
Oh, that's really
I
difficult.
can see. I understand why this is quite a hard one.
2014-15 who was the manager? Was that Tony Mowbray?
No, I've been
No,
right.
no. It would have been Tyler.
The year after.
I've been Roy
The
Dyler.
year, right.
Yeah, that 2014-15 was Dyler. Ronnie Dyler.
Yeah, I don't know
We
this one.
stumped. Are we stumped?
I think so.
Okay.
It's quite annoying me when you tell me now, but yeah.
I can't think of any more clues to narrow it down because I think if I give the next one away, then we'll just get it. But,
Where are they from?
well, that was going to be my next clue. So he's
Right.
European, but then I'll give you the nationality. He is Norwegian.
Oh, Stefan Johansson.
There you go.
Of course.
Yeah.
Finally got one.
I think that's quite an easy one to slip the mind.
Yeah, I would never have
Brilliant
thought.
season. I think. Well, I think he was there for a few years actually, but then I think it was maybe only 2 or 3 years he was maybe there at Celtic.
Aye.
And then he left again. But he was a kind of star under Dyler, if I remember rightly. So it was Stefan Johansson who won in
Sorry.
2015. Yeah.
Well done.
So-
That was a good teaser. I enjoyed that, even though I get none of them.
Yeah, so Davis, Higdon, Johansson, Sinclair, and Tavernier. Those are the 5 non-Scottish players, the last 5 to win that's the PFA award, not the Writers Award. So there you go, brilliant. So thanks very much everyone for watching today. Hope you enjoyed the different live, something different to bring you. Thanks very much, Dukes and Hendo, for coming on and sharing it with me all. So
Yeah,
yeah.
enjoyed that.
Brilliant. Okay, so we'll be back, I'm sure, soon, probably next week again for another TS. But for now, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see everyone very soon.